The term safe space has been used widely during student protests since the 80s and 90s. It is used to describe areas that are meant to be media-free, although some feel that safe spaces strip reporters of their right to be in a public area. The purpose of a safe space is to establish an area of security for whatever group of people, such as members of the LGBTQ community, different minority groups, and more, that have faced some sort of oppression or problem. A safe space is often created to raise awareness, spread support, and provide strong opposition to an oppressing group. Part of the way safe spaces work is by monitoring the language used within the space. This is done to avoid any subtle racism or discrimination that is very much apparent within microaggressions. Victims of microaggressions report feeling invisible, as though their credentials are being questioned and that they are given assignments based on their race.
Reporters Teresa Watanabe and Jason Song for the Los Angeles Times wrote an article covering microaggressions on college campuses. The article contained multiple accounts from different students who faced microaggressions within their college experiences. The article serves as an excellent example to cover microaggressions because it uses sensitive language, aims to educate people on the different microaggressions that are faced today, and takes good quotes from people who are victims of microaggressions. The method used here utilizes truthfulness in the manner that all journalists should strive for.
When dealing with the First Amendment, the contest of who is allowed to say what and under what circumstances has caused students at the University of Missouri to strike out. Students are fighting with other students and faculty members on who is entitled to free speech. Some students are experiencing negative actions against those who are voicing their opinions about anything they find controversial. Speakers are being disinvited, events on campus are being interrupted, and activists are being threatened for speaking up and voicing their own opinions. Problems with racism throughout the campus forced the school's president and chancellor to resign. The protests following up to this event were only covered to a small extent. The student reporter who was assigned to cover the protests was pushed away. He was stripped of his freedom to be in a public area and completely ignored.
For a faculty member who is actually a member of the Department of Communications to be asking for a violent approach, muscle, to remove this student journalism from campus, a place where he belongs, it's raised a large amount of controversy over the country. And the result of this is that the president and the chancellor of the university have stepped down, and she now has resigned from a courtesy appointment, and it probably won't be long until she steps down herself.
The school newspaper at the University of Colorado Boulder was faced with an issue when a fraternity posted rush flyers featuring a naked African-American woman. The fraternity house was located near an elementary school, which meant many young children were exposed to these flyers. The children, in return, protested outside of the house during recess. However, rather than printing a picture of the students protesting, the campus newspaper ran a rather large photo of the flyer itself. The importance of each professional news value plays a huge role in the way news is delivered and interpreted. The impact and human interest of stories like this must be delivered in a way that brings forth the message of the protest and looks to minimize the harm that can be spread, such as microaggressions and racism. It is sometimes a conflicting choice to decide what image to provide in a story, so a journalist must be aware of all the stakeholders. Unique to this case, the protesters, the message of the protest, and the fraternity all needed to be accounted for.
Another article that stands as a great example to talk about safe spaces is the Media Matters article by Hannah Groch-Begley. In her article, she discusses the way that the Wall Street Journal's Peggy Noonan criticized millennials for needing safe spaces and having trigger warnings on their college campuses. While Groch-Begley criticized Noonan for dismissing the problems of millennials, she pointed out that Noonan raised an important issue. If safe spaces are such an issue for people to be okay with, then how come the fight for mental health care on college campuses isn't stronger? Safe spaces are essentially a therapeutic communal area, and while many people don't agree with their establishment, even more don't try to make a difference in the mental well-being of college students across the country. So turning the discussion from safe spaces to a discussion of mental health services is an ethical way to give opposition exposure, and also an ethical attempt to find that middle road for both sides. Groch-Begley also utilized Rawls' veil of ignorance to include more sides to the discussion of safe spaces than normally accounted for. Namely, she included those who need mental health services on college campuses.
This article, written by Nathan Bierma, covering a protest during a commencement ceremony, doesn't give what the students are standing up for any justice. Published in the Chicago Tribune, the small article is a bit one-sided and covers very little of the protest itself. It gives a small detail in the beginning about students who walked out or stood with their backs towards the stage and the speaker, and others who rudely disrupted the speech, doing so by booing, talking over the speaker, or disconnecting the microphone. The rest of the article takes quotes from the speaker himself and the president of the school, dismissing the protest by saying, "This gives us occasion to say, what can we learn from this incident about the kind of world we're preparing students for?" This gives a feeling of false balance. Although the article is meant to talk about the protesters and the reasoning behind it, it instead steers away from it.
Reporter David Packman and his co-host Louis Modametti talked about a safe space created by a group of college students at Claremont McKenna College that was for people of color and allies they invite. The title of the video on Packman's YouTube channel is "College Has Safe Space from White People Where Whites Aren't Allowed."
A college has created a safe space from white people on campus where white students are not allowed. Here are the details. Last week, there were some protests and resignations at Claremont McKenna College. And since then, these safe spaces for students with students of marginalized identities have been popping up all over the campuses of Claremont colleges. And after protesters called for action, the president of the colleges, Hiram Shadash, stated his commitment to providing a permanent safe space for students of color in the near future. And until that time, until that happens, students of Claremont McKenna College have dedicated part of their office as a safe space for these students. The group Associated Students of Claremont McKenna College have dedicated part of their office as a temporary space. Last week, the Motley Coffee House at Scripps College put out a statement on its official Facebook page saying the Motley Sitting Room will be open tonight from 6 to 10 only for people of color and allies that they invite. Please feel free to come and use the space for whatever you need.
Immediately, this report appealed to the journalism of affirmation. Some of the language used throughout the video pushes towards this notion that the students forming the safe zone wanted to abstain from all contact with white students.
I don't know that saying, here's a space that doesn't allow white people, I don't think that's the solution.
It's not a solution to anything. Since when is isolation ever a solution to your problems?
Packman and Modametti never discuss anything about the safe zone or try to address why it was created in the first place. Instead, their coverage of the safe space tries to insult those who are in need of the safe space.
And in the real world, you are not going to have safe spaces. And that, to me, is the greatest concern with this.
That is exactly what I was thinking before today's show. Dave, what happens to a sapling when there's no wind, when there's no resistance, when there's not, it grows up, it's a very weak plant that cannot survive. And when someone has no adversity, no challenges, nothing of even in that realm happen to them in their lives, I think they grow up to be weak, pathetic, useless people.
This kind of journalism is dangerous to use because it helps spread pre-existing beliefs that end up harming people rather than informing them of the truth.
Many reporters, editors, and producers feel as if their power in the news is being stripped from them. Technology has seemed to replace print news. Regardless, journalists still hold a great deal of power and influence. Today, articles are produced more rapidly and more often during the day. It is because of this that more mistakes occur and that people are more hesitant to become writers. However, if you are careful with the information you have and with choosing what you consider to be a story or not, you should be in the clear.